Hello everybody, welcome back to Access Blockbusters and welcome to a 3-part video series in which I discuss how I would fix the MCU Phase 4. In this video, part 1 of the 3-part series, we discuss what I think are the biggest lessons and takeaways from the MCU Phase 4. So while part 2 and 3 are more speculative on my part and just a little bit of a fun thought exercise on how I would have fixed Phase 4 in hindsight, because again, we all have the benefit of hindsight now, which is obviously a big advantage, but those videos are just meant to be more light and fun and speculative. But this video in particular, even if those videos aren't going to impact the MCU moving forward, I think this video can teach us some valuable lessons that I hope Kevin Feige is already implementing in Phase 5. And I have no doubt that he has learned some of these lessons, and I hope all of them at least, and is working on them in Phase 5. So before we get into this video, I have done a rewatch of every single live action project in the MCU, all 16 of them. I have rewatched each one of them individually and done an individual video talking about what I think about these projects upon further examination. So make sure to check out those videos on the channel. And I just did a video ranking every single project in the MCU Phase 4. So make sure to check out those videos. I am super happy about the way that they turned out and just so excited to share them after a lot of hard work. Make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel and stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 where I discuss my individual plan to fix the MCU Phase 4. Let me know in the comments down below what you think are the biggest takeaways from the MCU Phase 4. And without further ado, let's get into it. So I've broken this down into 6 lessons, and honestly, there are probably a lot more, and I could probably have condensed this into a maybe tighter list, but these are just 6 things that came to the top of my mind when thinking about what they could have done. So first of all, I want to say I'm not just going to completely overhaul the entirety of Phase 4 when I'm thinking about how I would have fixed it. Really, this is looking at the Phase 4 that we got in its entirety and changing very little as I attempt to fix Phase 4 and go into part 2 and part 3. But in this video, I just want to look at objectively what we got and how I would have maybe changed it or what lessons we can take away moving forward into Phase 5. So number 1 is less Disney Plus shows. The shows can only be there if they are absolutely necessary. For example, WandaVision only works as a show. Keep it as a show. She-Hulk Attorney at Law, honestly, I think works only as a show, in this instance at least, in this iteration. Keep it as a show. But don't just give out random shows to random characters all the time. Make these shows that you were going to make shows movies if you're going to make them. But don't just make a ton of Disney Plus shows for the sake of content. I know that there's a whole kind of political side to this where Kevin Feige had to make a bunch of shows because of the former CEO of Disney, and I understand that. So I'm just saying, in a vacuum, when I look at Phase 4 of the MCU, less Disney Plus shows. Make these shows movies. And if you have too many movies, then maybe think about cutting a couple of these movies or shows, right? I think that it frees up a lot of space so that you can explore these characters while also making sure that you tighten up the stories as well, because Marvel can make movies. Marvel has not proven to me that they can make shows. They can make a couple really good ones, but they don't quite understand how to make really tight, solid shows. And for the meantime, I think the problem with a lot of these shows is that they could have been movies. So number 1, get rid of the shows and make shows only if they can only work in that format. Number 2, space these projects out. We do not want to have a repeat of having, 4 movies and 3 shows or 4 movies and 4 shows in one single year. Way too much storytelling. And I'll get into why in the later points, but just as a baseline, we do not want to inundate the MCU fans with way too much content. It seems like a good thing. I think at the end of the day, when we look back at Phase 4, it clearly was not a good idea. Just make sure to space out the content. Even 3 movies and 3 shows a year is kind of a lot, honestly. I would have done maybe like 4 projects total, 5 if necessary. However you want to disperse that, if 3 movies and 2 shows, or you want 2 movies and 3 shows, whatever you want to do. But again, I just think we need to spread these projects out. Point number 3. Balance the new and the old. One of the biggest points or the biggest lessons that I think Phase 3 of the MCU can teach us is that you need to balance the old and the new. So I appreciate that we got a whole bunch of series from Disney Plus that were introducing new characters in 2022. We got She-Hulk, we got Ms. Marvel, and we got Moon Knight. That being said, this was also in addition to tons of other new characters being introduced, like Kate Bishop, like Yelena Belova, like the Eternals, like Shang-Chi. You need to have a good balance of the new and the old, right? We had in Phase 3, we had Civil War, all the returning characters. We had Doctor Strange introducing 1 major new character, obviously supporting characters as well, but 1 major new character. Then we had Guardians 2, really introducing a couple side Guardians characters, but mostly the same. Spider-Man Homecoming, taking a character from Civil War. You get the idea, right? So I think a balance of the new and the old is super important to maintain cohesiveness and continuity within the MCU. Point number 4. And this goes back to the earlier point of spreading these projects out. Make sure that these characters are recurring and appear in other projects and shows other than their own. This is super important. And I have some quote unquote data. It's not really data. It's just me counting things. But, data that I think proves this point. Let's take a look at the 6 original Avengers in the Infinity Saga. And let's look at how often these characters appeared. I apologize if some of this data is wrong, but I think you're going to get the general point, even if one or two of these dates are wrong or I missed a movie or something like that. That being said, Iron Man, Tony Stark, appeared in 8 of the 23 MCU projects throughout phases 1 through 3. Captain America, 7 out of 23. Thor, 7 out of 23. Hulk, 7 out of 23. Black Widow, 7 out of 23, and Clint Barton, Hawkeye, 5 out of 23. These are including cameos, by the way. But I think cameos are important as well. Like, I'm including the Iron Man 3 post-credit scene where Bruce Banner shows up. But I think, again, my point is that they're important because it shows cohesiveness and continuity, right? You have these characters that are appearing all over the place that shows that this universe is connected. Now, let's look at the multiverse saga, and let's look at which characters recur in which projects. Anyone want to take a guess at which character recurs in the most MCU projects? It's Wong. And I think if you thought about that for a second, you would have gotten that answer. But it's a weird character because I love Wong. I think that Wong is a fantastic supporting character who probably could ascend to a main character at some point. But the problem is that that main character, adjacent to Wong is Doctor Strange. So what's interesting, I broke it down here, right? The character who appears the most is Wong. He appears in 4 projects: Spider-Man, No Way Home, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Okay, you have Wong. Then the next batch of characters appear in 2 out of the 16 projects in the MCU Phase 4. You have Yelena appearing in Hawkeye and Black Widow, then you have Wanda, you have Hulk, Doctor Strange, Abomination, Daredevil, Guardians of the Galaxy, technically Thor: Love and Thunder in the special. So, and sorry if I forget some characters here and there, but I'm just trying to illustrate a larger point here. Then look at all these characters who are only appearing in 1 out of the 16 projects in Phase 4 of the MCU. Vision, Falcon, Winter Soldier, Loki, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, Spider-Man, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, Thor, Jane Foster, She-Hulk, Werewolf by Night, Black Panther. It creates this jumble, this chaos, right? Because you need to have characters that are coming up in each project, and not just every single project, right? You don't want to just have Avengers in random projects just for the sake of it, but you want to have this cohesiveness. You want to have characters appearing in other projects because it shows that there is a wider story going on here. So for me, if I were to pick some characters that I think should have appeared in multiple projects, I would have picked Doctor Strange, the Hulk, Hawkeye, Shang-Chi, Black Panther, and Thor. I think that these are cornerstones of the MCU, probably Captain Marvel in there as well, that I think should have been in a lot of different projects throughout the MCU Phase 4, not just isolated to their own projects. And again, it's fine to have Wong appear in many different projects, but he's not appearing there because for the most part, there are really important things going on. I think that the Shang-Chi example is actually a good one, though, because he's appearing in there because he's trying to set up the fact that there are existential threats attached to the Ten Rings. But him showing up in She-Hulk, I would hardly count that as a connection to the wider MCU. I think it's just fun to see him again, right? Point number 5 goes with point number 4, and it's more team-ups and more team movies. I don't need Avengers films every other month. I don't. It's fine. You don't need an Avengers film in Phase 4 if you don't want one, Kevin Feige. I believe that going with the disparate nature of all these characters where they're just scattered across the universe, there need to be more team-ups. So you have something like a Thor Ragnarok in Infinity War where you have Thor and Hulk. You have Spider-Man and Iron Man together. You have Iron Man Black Widow all the way in Phase 1. And you had a few of those things in Phase 4. You had Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. You had Wanda and Doctor Strange. Yelena and Hawkeye and Kate Bishop. But at the end of the day, it's just not enough to have these characters kind of pop in and out here. You need to have them be major parts of the story, like how Black Widow was in Captain America the Winter Soldier and how Hulk was in Thor Ragnarok. And finally, number 6, explain the multiverse better. There are so many different explanations of what the multiverse is. I think that Loki set up something very interesting, and then you have this Miss Marvel time travel logic that doesn't jive with anything that's come before it, I don't think. I mean, it makes some kind of sense on its own, but doesn't really make sense just in the context of the wider MCU. Doctor Strange's multiverse doesn't really address what's going on with the TVA, neither does Spider-Man No Way Home. So I wish that there was more unity with the way that they were telling the story with the multiverse, because I think that while the multiverse is an interesting, if overplayed concept, I wish that we got a better understanding of what the MCU specific definition of the multiverse could be, because there is a lot of potential, there's infinite potential, pun intended. So, we have some lessons that I think we can take away from the MCU Phase 4. I just want to have some fun here and apply them. Let's apply these lessons that we've learned into what I hope will be an alternative scenario in which I can fix the MCU Phase 4, at least in my opinion. And again, we just want to make sure that we all have an understanding. This is in hindsight. So I know that there are a lot of problems that went on, obviously, with the pandemic and a lot of other things that went on with the productions and the Disney shakeups and all that kind of stuff. So that would have affected Phase 4, obviously. I'm just saying, with the benefit of hindsight, here's how I would have fixed Phase 4 of the MCU. That is coming up in part 2 of this 3-part series where I look at the MCU Phase 4 and take a look at what I think would have made it better. So stay tuned on the YouTube channel for that video. Make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel so you don't miss a single video that's coming out on the channel. I can't wait to share my plans with you guys of Phase 4 and how I would have fixed it. In the meantime, subscribe, leave a comment down below with some lessons you think we could have taken away from Phase 4, and I will see you guys in the next one.